Not too long ago, I put up a post on Craigslist asking to either sell or trade my fish tank for a smaller one. I put in my phone number as the contact source and asked to text only. After a couple of hours, I got a text from someone who was willing to trade. We agreed to meet at a Walmart in a couple of days when we were both free and do our trade. During those days, the guy kept on texting me, involving in small talk. He asked me about my name and where I worked, and me being foolish, I answered his questions. I use Craigslist often, and I never really had a bad experience with anyone, so I never really thought this guy was weird. I saw him more like friendly. I told this guy what car I drove and what college I went to, again never really stopping to think what kind of info I was giving a total stranger. When the day came to meet, this guy told me he could only meet me after 10 p.m. I thought that was odd, but agreed to meet with him anyway, since my poor fish were already stuck in a 5-gallon jug. So me and my boyfriend drove to the Walmart at about 10:15, and got there in 20 minutes. The guy texted me and said he was already there in an old yellow Camaro. I replied saying, "We're here too, in a gray." He then texted me and said, "Who is we?" At that moment, I realized something was really off with this guy, and I replied by saying, "My husband and me." That was a lie, but I felt he should know I wasn't alone. He never responded after that text. My boyfriend and I went around the parking lot a couple of times looking for the yellow Camaro, but we never found it. I tried calling the guy and he ignored my calls. We decided it was best to just leave. I don't know what would have happened if I had met this creep by myself, or even with my boyfriend there, but I have a feeling it would not have been something good. I removed the post from Craigslist that night, and saved the creep's phone number just in case he tried contacting me again. A couple of weeks later, I got a text from several different phone numbers asking about the tank. I never responded to anyone because I believe it was the same guy, since I for sure deleted the post immediately. I hope he can't somehow track my phone. And of course, I'm not using Craigslist anymore.
I live in a small village in the very north of Scotland, so large shops and resources are a very far distance. For that reason, I usually rely on internet shopping to get me my needs. I needed to buy a backpack for when I leave for university, one better than the one I already have, so I turned to Craigslist as I normally do. After looking for a short while, I came across a really good looking bag at only €15. I thought this was an absolute steal, so I phoned the seller. Immediately what struck me was this guy's accent. It was obvious that he wasn't Scottish, or even from the UK. He sounded Polish or something. He said he was from Glasgow. That's at least 5 hours by car from where I live, but when I told him the area I was from, he reluctantly offered to come to my house to give me it. This all seemed strange, being that the sale was only for €15. Nonetheless, I foolishly gave him my fucking address. He said he'd drop by later on that day. Skipping forward about 7 hours to like 10 p.m., I was thinking that he wasn't going to come, but at around 10:20, there was a chap at the door. Surprised that it was so late, I looked out the window around to the front door, just to be sure. And sure enough, it was a young guy standing with a backpack in his hand. Slightly relieved that it wasn't a robber, I went to the door and opened it up. It was the guy on the phone for sure. The accent confirmed it. He said, "Hey, here it is." I smiled and took out my wallet, taking out €30 because of the trouble he went to come here and the condition of the bag. He smiled and opened up his arms as if he wanted a hug. Being a gay guy, I rarely turned down a hug and just assumed it was a cultural thing, so I hugged him and left. I was still confused that he came all this way just for €15, but I didn't find it overly strange. But boy was I wrong. At around midnight, I was finishing another episode of 24 and was ready to go to bed. From outside the house, I heard a car door shut, which was really weird for this time of night in my area. The nearest house is like a quarter mile away, and I rarely see the people that live there. I paused the TV and went over to the window to see who it was. I recognized the car as being the green sedan that the guy had. But he wasn't there. No one was. It was at the point when I heard the back gate open. I fucking nearly shit myself. I ran quietly to the kitchen where the back door is, staying low down the way there, to avoid whoever it was seeing me from the kitchen window. I usually don't lock both doors till I go to bed, so both were still unlocked. I grabbed the keys from the counter and quickly locked the door. As I did, I got scared by the security light turning on in the back garden. It's a motion sensor that turns it on. I looked up to see that it was him again. He had a creepy smile on his face, no teeth showing, just a smile. I stood up and shouted, "Whoa, dude, what the fuck are you doing back there?" He said nothing and just smiled, looking directly at me. I found myself just staring at him until the situation actually kicked in, and I took the keys from the back door and then bolted to the front door to lock it. About halfway to the front door, I heard a window smash in the kitchen. My stomach ached at the fact that he's probably making his way into my house. I made a turn to go up the stairs towards the toilet so I could lock myself in there. While in the bathroom, I heard him stumbling and broken glass falling to the floor. He was in my house. I pulled my phone out of my pocket and quickly dialed 999. I told them of the situation as fast as I could, and they said they will get officers out to me as fast as possible. The police station was just up from my village, so I knew someone would get here generally quick. The operator asked me to stay on the phone until someone arrived. I was focused on the guy's footsteps, which would slow down and speed up every so often. He eventually walked upstairs and tried to open the bathroom door. When he realized it was locked, he said, "Ah, I know you're in there, Cameron." Hearing him say my name made my stomach churn. I screamed, "The police are coming, just back the fuck off, man." After saying that, he started to kick down the door. I backed up against it with more strength than I knew I had. Then in the distance, I heard the sirens and the blue lights reflecting from the bathroom windows. He continued to kick the door, but then I heard the car doors outside open in fast footsteps. I heard the front door open, and then the police. "Police officer with a taser, drop the knife!" Again, I felt sick knowing that he had a knife. It sounded as if he started running back downstairs. Then I heard, and the guy screaming, and then a thump. After he came through, they officially arrested him for attempted murder and trespassing. I have pressed charges, but the fact is he won't get any more than 7 months in jail. After that, he will be free to come right back. I am now trying to sell my house to get out of here as fast as possible.
I live in the St. Louis area, and this is a horror story about something that happened to me that almost fucked up my life forever. When I was 21 years old, I broke up with my first ever serious girlfriend, who I had been together with for 8 months. Needless to say, I was devastated. I fell into a deep depression and I began abusing painkillers and Xanax really heavily, and began looking for any chick I could find to rebound with. I ended up looking on the personal section of Craigslist, and I found an ad for a girl named Stephanie. I began talking to her, and I arranged for her to come pick me up one night. We had intercourse that night and decided to make it a regular thing. She was an older lady, about 35, and a bigger girl, but she had her own apartment and enough money to keep me loaded on as much drugs and alcohol as I wanted. To be honest, I kind of used this lady, and used her as a sugar mama for a better lack of a word. After a while, she grew really attached to me, and started to want a more serious relationship. Eventually, she started dropping hints about wanting to get married. She said she wanted to do this to help me out so she could get me on her insurance, so I can get help for my drug and alcohol problem, which I refused to consider. One day we got into a big argument and she told the police that I had been abusing her and got a temporary restraining order on me. A week after she did this, she called me crying her eyes out saying please forgive me, I love you and all this other stuff, and she wanted to come pick me up and buy me some dope and alcohol and get me something to eat, and being the addict that I am, I of course accepted. From the moment she picked me up, I noticed that she was acting kind of odd. She was usually really talkative and was always on my ass wanting to talk about this and that, but on this day she was oddly quiet. We got back to her apartment. After I walked in, she immediately pushed me on the couch and pulled down my pants and began giving me head. Then she climbed on top of me and began riding me, and she seemed angry when I didn't come inside her. I had been getting bad vibes off of her the whole night, so after this happened, I immediately asked her for a ride back home, which she quickly agreed to do. After I got dropped off at the house, I went inside and sat down with my sister and watched some SpongeBob with her. About 10 minutes after I got home, I got a call on the phone. I picked up the phone and to my surprise, a lady on the other end said, "This is the St. Louis County Police Department. We're going to need you to come outside to talk to you." I ran downstairs and hid my weed and my pills, and then walked outside to figure out what the hell was going on. When I walked outside, there were about 7 different cops on my porch, and they were all pointing tasers and guns at me. One of them hit me on the back of my leg with a nightstick and pulled me to the ground, and I was handcuffed. The cops then talked to my mom and got permission to go inside the house, where they took a drug dog and began doing a thorough search of my room and basement area. None of the cops on the scene would tell me what was going on. Whenever I would ask a question about why they were there, they told me I would have to talk to the detective at the station. When I got to the police station, I had a bombshell dropped on me. Apparently, this lady had accused me of kidnapping her and raping her. She told the police that she had come by my house to return some of my stuff because we had just broken up, and that I had come out and held a knife to her throat and forced my way into her vehicle, and then took her back to her apartment and raped her repeatedly. Thankfully, I'd remembered that we made a couple of stops on the way to her apartment. She had gone inside of a gas station to get a couple packs of cigarettes with me, so there was no way that I could have kidnapped her. The police still swapped my dick for DNA, and they also took my clothes for evidence, and I was forced to spend the night in the St. Louis County Jail wearing nothing but hospital scrubs. I was released the next morning, but my ordeal was far from over. This lady began constantly stalking me. She would call me every night at odd times from blocked numbers, and would either be crying into the phone or just beg to talk to me. I also began seeing her vehicle quite a lot in the neighborhood, even though she lives nowhere close to me. I called the police about this a couple of times, but they didn't really seem to care. They told me I would have to go get a restraining order on her in order to make it stop. I wanted nothing to do with the court system though, because I have a criminal record, and I just decided to ignore her and hope that the problem would go away. After a couple of months, she finally did stop bothering me as much. However, to this day, sometimes I get calls at 2 or 3 in the morning from blocked numbers, and every new girlfriend I get, she messages them on Facebook and tells them how I raped her. Moral of the story: be careful who you meet online. Whether you're a guy or a girl, all it takes is one crazy person to completely ruin your life.
My roommate V was always at her boyfriend's place, so I was living essentially alone in a 2-bedroom apartment, and my friend Esme was crashing with me while looking for her own place. She found a place nearby renting a master bedroom with attached bathroom, female only, for way cheap. We checked out the Google Street View on my laptop and it looked like a cute little beach house. She rode her bike over to check it out alone. She said it was 2 beach-type white guys, a young, disheveled stoner guy, and a middle-aged parrot head guy that would close talk while giving her obvious elevator eyes the whole time. She's a pretty petite Mexican girl, and was 21, and the older guy kept saying she was just what they were looking for, kinda slowly, in what she described as an uber creepy voice. The younger guy just stared and followed them around. She thought it was odd they each slept in the tiny guest rooms and were renting out the master bedroom, but decided to take a look at it anyway. She said it was a really nice room with a big heavy wooden 4-poster bed in the middle of the room that looked like it belonged in a castle, and the bathroom had a huge shower with multiple shower heads on the walls, like it was built for a bunch of people to shower at once. She didn't like being in this back bedroom with the 2 guys looming over her, so she said it was really stuffy and she wanted to make sure her unlocked bike in the front yard was okay. She all but ran to the front yard, and once she was outside with bystanders, she felt much better. So she's standing in the front yard with the older guy and he's explaining that she can move in right away, but the bed has to stay exactly where it is. It comes with the room and is bolted to the floor so it can't be moved. They have special sheets for it and everything so she can bring all of her stuff, but can never move that bed. Also, she can have friends over, but only if they're also young women or girls, no men. And they can sleep over but also need to sleep in that bed. The hardwood floor was just too uncomfortable. The couches in the living room are suede so no one can sleep on them. All the reasons why a big pile of girls need to sleep on the bed. So she's sufficiently creeped out by this guy and texts me to come over. I ride my bike over, and as I'm pulling up, she's leaving. We start to ride a little away, and he yells out after us. It's mandatory, but we always have a blast. She kind of shudders and I ask her what's up. She says she'll tell me over a drink, so we ride to the nearest little beach bar. She explains about the room, the bed, and the guys, and then tells me part of the deal is a mandatory skiing trip to Lake Tahoe in Northern California each year. She can invite girls on the trip that have been to the house before if the guys think they're cool enough. It's free for her and her girlfriends, but mandatory that she go with the guys as their official woman. There would be other men there, but they all brought their own women. So our minds start racing and we convince ourselves that the bedroom and the trip are some elaborate webcam BDSM situation or something. Needless to say, she never moved in there or took them up on their free ski weekend offer. V ended up moving in with her boyfriend and Esme moved in with me for a couple of years.